All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to give you a lot of great information about cybersecurity training and the importance of it. We're just going to give people about 2 more minutes to jump in here, and then we'll do some introductions and get going. Okay, I'll get rid of some more boring information and then get us going into our introductions and kickoff here. So just wanted to thank you guys again. We're super excited to be starting this new collection of webinars we'll be hosting around once a quarter. So keep an eye out for that. Regarding the Amazon gift card giveaway for all of you who registered and are attending with us today, we'll be pulling that at the end of the webinar. I'll let you guys know and then reach out to that individual via the email that they registered with post this event. And if any questions arise during the webinar that you have interest on, want something clarified during the discussion, please feel free to submit that through our Q&A section. We'll be checking that and we'll try to get to everybody's that we can. So without further ado, we'll get going. So this is Cybersecurity, the Dark Web, and the Importance of Training, hosted by us, Symmetric IT Group. And then I want to thank our partner, Breach Secure Now, for joining us today. And I will get going on their introductions next and then hand it over. Sorry, Ollie, just give me that next slide there so I can see your guys' beautiful faces. So with us today, we have Ali Adra, who is a partner engagement consultant at Breach Secure Now. He's been there for over 2 years and will be kind of our training expert today as we guide you guys through this. Also joining and speaking with us today is George Lakiotis, our lovely CEO and founder, who founded Symmetric IT Group over 16 years ago. So quite the milestone. And then we also have the wonderful Karen Harris, who is our project manager and service engineer, who's been at Symmetric IT Group for 4 years now. And in case anybody didn't know who I was, but I'll be hanging back during the speaking portions of this, I'm Emma Pitnick, the marketing director here at Symmetric IT Group, also been here for 4 years. So I'll let Ollie take it away here. Thanks.
Thanks for the introduction, Emma, and thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day to join us. Really excited to have this presentation, get you guys some information, share some new information that you might not know, and just have a good discussion with you all. So as for what we're going to dive into, couple main topics. First, how to avoid the cost of human error on your business. Some statistics that you should keep in mind that really paint the picture of what we're dealing with and what's going on today. We're going to break down an attack that a cyber criminal would potentially carry out. And then lastly, we're going to spend some time breaking down the dark web, what it is, why we should care about it. And then from there, like Emma said, going to do a drawing for the prize at the end. So to start off with the cost of human error, there's a couple things to consider. Being unaware has a big impact on businesses. That's why educating everybody in your organization is very important. Cyber criminals are are tricking people every day, and with with AI, things like that, they're getting more sophisticated. So it's really important to stay up to date on what they're doing and how we can protect ourselves. And unfortunately, innocent mistakes often are the reason for some incidents. So we're actually going to go over how to avoid those mistakes caused by human error, and then go over some steps that you can take today to protect your employees and your organization. So quick poll before we get started. Curious, does anybody currently have cybersecurity training in place? Emma is going to pop open a poll. If you all could take a second to vote, be much appreciated.
Sorry, guys, give it 1 second. It's loading here. It should be popping up shortly. All right, well,
Give it
that's
a,
a good percentile.
yeah, very good. It looks like most of you actually do have training in place, which is great. A couple of you don't, but good news is Emma and her team can help you get set up with something like that. Thank you all for sharing. Now we can actually get into some examples. And you might be wondering, what's the problem with not being cyber aware? So let's use some real life stories to show you what the problem could be. And we're going to start off with the employee who simply forgot. So Sam here, he was involved in a breach. He was busy, maybe getting ready to head into the weekend, and unfortunately, he forgot to change his password. Fortunately, like many others, Sam was reusing multiple passwords, something you would learn in security awareness training that you shouldn't do. And a hacker ended up purchasing some of Sam's credentials on the dark web, which we'll get into later on. Because of this, since Sam was using the same password across multiple sites, they decided to try that password, and they were able to access his company's data, get information on his finances and customer information. And all of this was because Sam forgot to change his password. Another example is the accidental transfer. So very often hackers are waiting for the perfect opportunity. They know that as humans, we make mistakes. And in this case, there was a very small difference in the email here. So phony email domain, many times the bad guys or gals, they like to just change a letter, maybe the S to a dollar sign or an I to a one, things like that. And in this case, that's what happened here. The domain was actually fake. So accidental transfer here was a transfer to someone that wasn't the intended recipient. So they were trying to get that discount, and unfortunately, they they had even bigger problems on their hands. This one's really good, and after I go over this, George actually has a really great real life story of something he experienced personally. But in this case, attachment surprise, Phil was going about his normal business, pulling up Excel, looking at customer invoices like he typically does, and all of a sudden the screen went blank. He wondered what was going on. All of a sudden, he had a message popping up on his screen saying that his files were locked. That's a problem in itself. But even worse, the what was going on was ransomware. He was being prompted to pay $150,000 of Bitcoin in order to get access to his files again. And if anyone follows the market, Bitcoin is up right now, so not sure if he wants to pay for those files, but he's in a tough situation nonetheless. So because of this, he had to make the decision of making this payment or losing everything. And in real life, just like it says here, there's not necessarily a guarantee that the bad guys are going to follow through with what they said they would do. That's the problem with them. You're not dealing with proper entities that play by the rules. George, if you want to share the story you shared with me yesterday, think a lot of people would find it fascinating and get a lot from it.
Yes, thank you for that, Ali. We have a co-managed client that really didn't fully have our IT support. We basically just helped them with patch management, network monitoring, and an antivirus solution. So they didn't really subscribe to all of our solutions. One of their home users, using their own computer, which we do not like to do, was compromised via phishing email. There was an application installed on our machine that bypassed the very archaic VP or antivirus that they had on their machine. They ended up saving their SSL VPN login back to their network. The bad actor basically was able to get into the corporate network and start to do very minimal things that any Windows administrator could do. So it didn't, nothing was detected as, something was happening. Basically, they were able to infiltrate the network and send out ransomware, which then infected close to 65 systems. All of their servers had to be wiped, reloaded, and all 65 of those machines had to be wiped and loaded from scratch. Most of the time in this industry, we only back up the servers, and we always want the users to put their data on those servers. So a lot of the users that save things locally were affected, and it happened probably one of the fastest compromises we had seen to date. So that's one of the things. If this company had the proper cybersecurity training, they would have been able to kind of realize what they were opening. And obviously, if we had more engagement with them to be able to give them a lot more protection and not have them use their home computer, this would have gone a different direction. So
And
that's one of
may
my
I
stories.
add, may I add, they were down for a whole week. So I was part of that project and I was going desk to desk trying to re-put everyone back together and people were just lounging around. So imagine just a small mistake being detrimental to your company and work function that day. So a lot of money wasn't being made simply because of a simple error. So thank you, George, for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. So this one I think is really funny and also a little bit upsetting because sometimes when we're trying to do something good, we end up making a mistake and causing some problems. So Craig here was shouting out his team, people that work very hard and take care of everybody's health at hospitals. And Craig decided to take a selfie, show everyone hard at work. What ended up happening was Craig posted the picture, and maybe he didn't zoom in or notice this, but there was actually some information, some PHI that was shown in that picture. Because of this, one of those patients, Gwen, actually saw it, was very upset, rightfully so, and reported the local hospital to OCR. Because of that, the hospital was investigated and it was determined that they were not in compliance with HIPAA guidelines. So, due to a simple mistake, even though it was from a place of kindness, Craig actually ended up getting his organization in trouble a little bit. And George, I guess, is a man of a lot of experience, being in the field for a while or in the industry, so he has a story to share here as well.
Yeah, it goes along on the side of the photobomb. We had a new client that we were onboarding, I would say probably before Google would actually blur anything out. And this particular person decided to have Google come into their practice, which they had multiple locations, and do one of those, the Google camera so that people could walk through their lobby and see how great it was. And they actually went into where the nurses' stations were, and you could plainly see, and this is one of the things that just drives me crazy when I would be in the field, people had stickers of usernames, websites, and passwords clearly seen on, Google when you would search through Google Maps. And I immediately, being that it was going to be a new client, I immediately called the owner and said, you got to take this down because I am not the only one that probably noticed this. And people love to play with Google Earth and Google Maps and maybe a competitor, so it was very shocking to me. Luckily, Google now blurs out if you do that. So it's a bit beneficial, but I don't have any idea how much this could have cost. But it was a bit before, you know, ransomware and the compromises were as bad as they are today. So that's my photobomb Google Earth story.
So basically a free password alert
Yes.
at that time.
Yeah.
So this one resonates with me a little bit because I often misplace my phone. But in this case, Avery lost his phone, wasn't able to find it later on. But because Avery had used this phone for work purposes as well, there's a little bit more at stake here. So when Avery lost his phone, he felt embarrassed, didn't want to get in trouble, so decided to just suck it up, buy a new phone, didn't tell anybody about it. Problem here is there's a company policy about missing devices, but even bigger of a problem is this device was found and then sold with the company data from Avery's organization still on the phone. So who knows whose hands that could have gotten, whether it was just one person or if that person was a cyber criminal, they could have found just a jackpot of information. So any mistake like this is something that should be reported, so the correct measures can be taken to prevent any further damages. So what do all these mistakes have in common? They were accidents, but they can be prevented. So of course, we're all busy, like I said, we make mistakes. Some of us are also unaware of some cyber practices, so that's a good place to start, becoming aware, and supporting your organization goes a long way as well. So I know at BSN, we take security awareness training as well. So do the folks at Symmetric IT. So it's really important that everyone's on the same page because we're all a team. We win together, we lose together. The organization goes down, you're going down too. And it's even more important, I would say, for small businesses because they're targeted more often, which we'll get into, but also for those that maybe start their own company. This is your baby. You want it to grow and to thrive. You don't want a simple mistake to be the reason your business fails or goes under or has to temporarily shut down. A couple simple steps you can take to prevent human error. Number one, training to your staff. Going to keep on drilling that idea in. Help people identify scams. So don't just assume because somebody has training that they understand it. You could remember back in school, may have been sitting there during math class just thinking, I was lost like 30 minutes ago. I have no idea what's going on. So you also want to have an open line of communication with your colleagues, with management, so people feel comfortable asking questions and learning more. Strong password hygiene, it's a given, but want to mention that as well. Don't leave staff in the dark. So on top of training, make sure that policies are in place and that your staff knows about the policies and what they mean, why they're important. And then lastly, knowing about your vulnerabilities. You can't defend something that you don't know about. So you have to know about your assets, whether it be your people, infrastructure, anything like that. Knowing your vulnerabilities is really important. And now Karen's actually going to give you some tips on being cyber aware.
We wanted to share with you guys little tidbits to keep that cyber awareness, before you get with Symmetric and get that specialized cybersecurity training. And we wanted to start with cyber hygiene, right? You want to start these habits to make sure that your data is secure from any type of hacking. And so we're going to start with social media hazards, right? A lot of people like to post when they're on vacation or use their job. Hey, I got a salary raise. And as much as I like bragging about salary raises, you don't want to put that on social media because that's how credit card companies verify if you want a new line of credit. I know I had a friend who updated her passport and decided to take a picture. Also, not great. Passport numbers on there. After going on vacation, posting pictures that lets people know essentially you're not home. Come rob you. So what you want to do afterwards is post the pictures after you've come back from vacation. So let people see how your vacation was, but doesn't let you know that you're not home. Another cyberware tip is free Wi-Fi. I know airports, Starbucks, and like libraries have free Wi-Fi, but in exchange, that means your info might be watched. To combat that, use a VPN. And so Symmetric can assist you with that if you don't have that set up for you personally. Lastly, mobile cleanup. I know for my mom, she likes to look at the Bible app and she likes to tap on all the little ads just to get bypass it and see a special verse. The more apps you have on your phone, the more it's bad for tracking. So if you no longer need it, don't give them access to you anymore, just uninstall it. And lastly, the personal versus work devices. You don't want to use your work cell phone for your personal life. For instance, if you get subpoenaed for something or you're on a board, that means all your devices are open to be reviewed. And you also don't want your kids' pictures on your work cell phone as well. So those are some of the tips to keep cyber aware. Back to you,
This
Emma.
is a great time. We had a question come in from Edward. He asked, in terms of creating cyber aware culture, what are the key elements of an effective employee training program? How can organizations measure the effectiveness of these training programs and ensure that employees remain vigilant without experiencing cyber fatigue? So if one of you or multiple of you could chime in on that, I think that's a really valuable question there.
Yeah, I'll start, and then Karen and George, if you have anything to add, go for it. So what I think is really important with a successful training program is consistency or frequency. So instead of just training once a year, forgetting about it, and then just trying to check off a box, break down some training or education into small bite-sized pieces. So just a little bit of training a week, or even just a little bit a month goes a long way, as opposed to just trying to dump a whole bunch of information on someone once a year, hope and with the hopes of them retaining that information. It's also important to have high frequency or consistent learning on an ongoing basis, because things change throughout the year. In the world we live in today, the digital world, things are changing all the time. So staying up to date on trends or new threats is almost impossible to do if you're only taking training once a year. And then last thing I want to say is having discussions with your employees during maybe reviews, performance reviews, things like that, keeping that information in front of them, bringing up what they've done with their training or what they haven't done to hold them accountable.
That was good. I will add that it starts from leadership, really. You know, if the leadership is not integrating that into the company culture, no one's going to really take it seriously. And really, at that point, also having relevant and realistic content. You know, if it's some scenario that may never happen, you're a nuclear plant worker. You know, we're not all that. We're not rocket scientists, but there is, you want to have relevant and realistic content, and you want to interact. You want it interactive in gaming. Like, I love gaming. I watch my credit score, so I love our cybersecurity training because I can see where I am against everybody else. And then, like you said, Ali, consistency is really a big factor in my opinion. Lastly, I would say phishing campaigns. You have to inspect what you expect. So if you're able to test your employees, not only by having some real world scenarios, also phishing simulations, they're always on the lookout for that phishing email so that they can get their score up. And that keeps them more vigilant when it really comes down to looking at the other email more seriously. So that's my opinion on that.
And if I may add, I'm also competitive. So I'm with you, George. Anytime I can increase my score so I can get someone higher than someone, I'm definitely down for the cause. I encourage, especially competing in teams and having like a healthy competition among colleagues.
And then last thing to add, Edward, the Breach Secure Now platform, or the platform that George and his team provide, actually has a special metric to keep track of growth in terms of cyber awareness and partaking in activities that would bring someone to be more aware. But we'll show you that in a little bit. So next, we're going to dive into some statistics. So hopefully those stories were something that you could relate to or understand, could see happening in real life, but you may be wondering, okay, but how often does that actually happen? So now we can dive into that. We're going to uncover some of the different types of cyber criminals that are taking advantage of those human mistakes that we covered. Talk about where cybersecurity is today. Break down the classic phishing attack, and from there, we'll dive into the dark web, like I said. But first, another quick poll: has anyone ever received a phishing attack or fell for one?
All right, I'll stop it there, but it looks like there's a lucky few who haven't, but most people have.
Yep, and that's pretty common. If you haven't had one yet, whether hopefully you don't fall for it or nothing comes of it, but most likely, hate to be the bearer of bad news, something will most likely come across your desk at some point. So first, the folks that are doing these phishing attacks, a couple different types. So the classic hackers that are exploiting vulnerabilities, of course, that's what typically comes to mind. There are some that are a little bit different in terms of their motive. So some folks are more after a long-term game, trying to steal somebody's identity and underscore the importance of what they have in place. So maybe it's someone trying to steal someone's identity that's a founder or CEO like George, or it could be on the personal side outside of work. These types of attacks happen all the time during work hours, after work hours. So that's also something important to keep in mind. And then lastly, there's also cyber terrorists. So with the digital age we live in today, the bad guys are also doing this on a global level, a national level. So that's also something to keep in mind. But at the end of the day, like I said, the cyber crime effects are very high on everybody, whether it's at work or outside of work. So a couple statistics here. So 350% on average is the percentage that of people that will receive phishing attacks. So that's why it's a little surprising that some of you didn't receive any, but that's good overall. Actually, small businesses are the people that get attacked the most. So 61% of small businesses reported that they had an incident of some kind in the last year. 83% of small businesses aren't in a good spot to cover themselves after an attack would happen. So with cyber liability insurance, things like that, there's 83% of companies who don't have anything like that in place. And then 14% of small businesses consider their cyber attack and risk mitigation ability as being effective. So people aren't too confident, and everyone starts somewhere. But at the end of the day, we want everyone to be more confident with cybersecurity. We don't want people to be scared. So security awareness training is going to help big time there. Like I said, might be common sense, but it actually might surprise some that the small businesses are actually targeted more than those big companies. And the reason is a lot of those small companies don't have security measures in place. They don't train their employees. So they're sitting ducks. So at the end of the day, if you're a big company, small company, doesn't matter. This is important. So one of the most common attacks, phishing attacks, there's a few different types, but essentially breaking it down into baby terms, you're getting an email from somebody trying to take some information from you. Perhaps they're pretending to be someone you know. At the end of the day, couple different types. So mass phishing, very generic. They cast a wide net, see if anyone by chance is going to make a mistake, give away some information. Spear phishing, more targeted, and this is when people are being targeted with information that's out there about them. So, for example, with Karen and what she shared about being on vacation, maybe someone sees that you're on vacation, and they try to send you an email saying, "Oh, come to this restaurant downtown at the beach. There's a happy hour going on. Download this ticket for a free drink," something like that. So they found out that you're in this area because you were posting, and then they target you based on something they found out. Business email compromise, multi-step attack, and this is to trick email recipients into believing who they're engaging with is someone that they know and trust. And oftentimes it's accompanied by that person asking the recipient to carry out a certain task. So, for example, with the gift card at the end of the raffle, maybe someone pretends to be Emma. They find out that the raffle is going on, and then they reach out saying, "Download this gift card." And at the end of the day, you're excited, but it was a trap of sorts. So it's an example, but these are all three different types of phishing attacks. We'll break them down a little bit as well with this story for business email compromise. So we're going to take a look at this example of a successful attack. And on average, as you can see here, they cost around $200,000. And like I broke down on the last slide, the goal is to steal sensitive data, gain access to systems, and very often money is involved as that's a big motivator. So we came up with a story. Apparently, Mariah Carey had enough of the spotlight. She's decided to work at an engineering firm. Good for her. Tom Cruise decided to follow in her footsteps. He's left the spotlight. He's now the office manager at an architectural firm. We'll call them Client B. And then there's a cyber criminal, not as famous as Mariah or Tom, but playing an important role here. So what happened is Mariah Carey had credentials of her email account compromised. This could have happened in a bunch of different ways, but at the end of the day, someone who shouldn't have had her information got their hands on it. The cyber criminal used her credentials to access her account, and he set up a nifty email rule that would push anything that was sent to Mariah to his email so he could see how she interacts with others, see what's coming across her desk, and plan a way to pull off a heist of sorts, waiting for the right time to strike. So speaking of the right time to strike, this is what happened. A legitimate invoice was sent from the engineering firm to the architect, saying to Tom, "Here's the attached invoice for the equipment. Additional charges are going to be applied after 45 days. Looks normal, but at the end of the day, it wasn't. So based on the cyber criminal being in the environment, what he then did was purchased a fake email domain and created a bank account with fake details, and he decided to get in on the fun. So what happened here is the real email from Mariah wasn't real. So a fake email domain was used, looks very similar to Mariah's email, but things were switched up a little bit. Because of this, also one thing he did was add someone to the email chain, make it look more credible. So Mariah's saying to herself, "Okay, I also know Rihanna. This is most likely real." So that always helps the bad guys, hurts us. And what ended up happening was Mariah Carey lost her client. Her company had reputational damage due to the mistake, and they might even have future litigation problems. Tom ended up sending $50,000 to who he thought was Mariah, but there was the secret middleman who intercepted it, and he even sent $100,000 second time a week later. So at the end of the day, Tom and Mariah both had some problems. Maybe both should have stayed in the showbiz industry. But to be fair, could happen to anyone with security awareness training. Maybe that wouldn't have happened to them. That's the business email compromise story we have for you today. So to avoid that, good password hygiene, as we had mentioned, multi-factor authentication. So for those of you who don't know multi-factor authentication, instead of just putting in your password to log into an application, for example, you're also going to get a prompt to do something else, provide some other information like a secondary password or security question. Oftentimes we have authenticator apps. So it says, are you logging in at these coordinates? You just say yes. And that's a measure to make sure it's really you trying to log in, for example. Ongoing training. And with that training, it's good to be aware of different attacks or trends that are out there. But as George mentioned, simulated phishing is really important too, because it actually gives users an opportunity to see what an attack would look like and interact with an email without real life consequences. Now we can dive into the dark web, the dirty sandbox, if you will, what it is, why you should care about it, and what's on there. Before that, I'm curious, does anyone know what the dark web is?
All
Okay,
right.
so a lot of folks do, a couple don't. No worries. If you don't, we're going to dive right into it. So the dark web from a high level is a concealed part of the internet. And on the dark web, there's a lot of information being passed around between cyber criminals. So originally was used for a lot of illicit activities, but nowadays information after it's extracted, maybe from a phishing attack, something like that, it's now being posted on the dark web, and it's a marketplace for those bad actors to sell data to maybe other bad actors or to get data in order to pull off a more complicated scheme. So to help us understand the dark web a little more, I want to break down some myths and misconceptions and shed some light on the truth of the dark web. So originally, and oftentimes people think the dark web is solely for criminal activities, but in reality, it's also a place that people can be anonymous, share different forms of communications, be activists on certain topics. That at a high level, it's just like you see here, everyone hiding behind a mask, but the interactions aren't always illegal. Going off of that, not everyone who accesses the dark web is an illegal hacker. So essentially, common people like us, we could access the dark web too. Probably not a place we want to spend time on, but it's good to know that it's not just for cyber criminals. And although people can be often anonymous on the dark web, it's not foolproof. So law enforcement agencies oftentimes end up investigating the dark web and sometimes are able to, thankfully, trace criminals and their activities. And although it's a mysterious place, there actually are some regulations. They aren't necessarily fair, but there are some sets of rules that are self-regulated by the members that are in communities on the dark web. And lastly, it's not always accessible through any browser. It does require special software. Like I said, it's still accessible by a common person. George, if you could chime in and and share your thoughts on the dark web, that'd be great. Just sum it up from your experience and what you see.
Sure. So the dark web to me is the biggest part of the internet. The internet, you think of it like an iceberg, you only see that top piece. That's the top piece that you're seeing. That's the regular internet. The bottom half is really the dark web. And the fact that we can now scan the dark web and kind of get ahead of what's happening, we've been able to keep our eyes on it and be able to stop any compromises that have happened, especially due with people who tend to use their professional emails for their personal life, which drives me absolutely crazy because you shouldn't have your, gym membership tied into your, your professional email. And the other big thing is if you are able to get ahead of it, you'll be able to really see what compromises are out there. You'll be able to get reports on what new compromises are possibly coming up. You can actually even see they have planned compromises that they haven't even launched yet. So if you can get into some of those groups, and some of the companies that we work with can do that, and you really can get ahead of the game. Also, if you're looking for a liver, you can get it on the dark web too, but that has nothing to do with being compromised.
Thank you, George. And as far as being naive, of course, there are some risks, but everyone should be less naive since you all joined us today. But a couple of risks are right here on the screen for you, and I'll let you guys and gals read that for a minute here. All right, so as far as taking action is concerned, with the dark web, if you come to find out that your information was a part of an incident, there's a couple things we can do. So assess the breach, determine who was involved, what information of yours may have been put out there, change any passwords that you discovered were a part of those incidents, monitor your accounts regularly from then on, alert authorities if any of your information was compromised. Local law enforcement agencies are a good place to start. Make sure to secure your identity if and where possible. So maybe if it was a credit card and your information there, banking information was released, definitely want to contact the right people early and often. Educating yourself is big too. You made a mistake. Hopefully things are okay, but you want to make sure you don't make that same mistake twice. And lastly, seeking professional help. George and his team are a wealth of knowledge. They have great tools in place, a lot of experience. So working with professionals also makes things easier and reduces the stress and the burden of having to take care of it on your own. So next, we'll actually talk a little bit about what Symmetric IT offers, the platform they have for security awareness training. Karen, if you want to chime in here, much appreciated.
Oh, wow. I wasn't even ready for that part. What we offer is PII Protect, and that, just like that dashboard shows, and George had discussed earlier, it's like a credit score. The higher, the better. Annually, we post the big training, and then in between, just to keep that fresh in your mind weekly, we do micro trainings to increase that score. And the admins get to see the dark web component. So if your passwords have been leaked in the dark web, you get notifications and you can see which accounts have been. I know recently I contacted a client regarding their LinkedIn password being on the dark web and immediately changing that. And you also get weekly newsletters, and you can set up policies that your company can acknowledge. This is the part where I love, because this is where the teams can compete. You can change your name into a cute code name or just use your regular name. And that's where everyone puts their training in and all the scores are posted. The admins, especially me, will notify when someone has failed a quiz or the major training or fell for one of my famous phishing campaigns, which I love sending out.
I
Yeah,
almost
thanks
fell
for
for one
sharing
the
that,
other
Karen.
day. So it was one of the best I've ever seen. And I was just waiting for an Amazon package and I just returned it and I got the email and I'm like, wait a minute. This goes to my personal email. Why am I getting it here? And so I actually hit the catch fish button and it said, it gave me some points and I was very excited about catching it. So it happened to anyone.
Exactly, exactly. And as Karen touched on, everyone has a unique score. Your scores will go up for participating in more training. If you fall for any of Karen's famous phishing campaigns, you might lose some points, but then you can get them back later on. But also, it's important, some of the questions that were asked earlier, how do we keep folks on the right path? So each individual can see how they're trending, and maybe as a manager, leader of an organization, these metrics can be discussed in meetings. Karen also mentioned there's a leaderboard, not shown in this screenshot, but with everyone having their own score, you can see how you compare to your colleagues. At Breach Secure Now, we take it seriously, but we also have a lot of fun with it, and we have a prize that we give away to the person in first place at the holiday party every year. So as much as security awareness training or cybersecurity can be a little scary, it can also be fun. Make something lighthearted that's serious. That's a good way to make sure everyone's educated, but also staying on track. Appreciate everybody joining. Emma has a few things to say to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. That was super informative and helpful. If you are just curious about just gaining a little bit more information on paper that you could go read about, feel free to scan this QR code. It'll just lead you to a short guide that has a little bit more information, and feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any follow-up questions. We will be posting this webinar in the near future as well if anyone wanted to come revisit it. We did receive a handful of more questions that I want to get answered before we wrap up here. And once we get those answered, I'll then announce the Amazon winner. So a couple of them are similar to one another. Alicia and Edward both sort of asked about uh, cloud AI, got asked about multiple times from Heidi, as well as, what is the strategy for ensuring that cybersecurity training evolves in response to the rapidly changing threat landscape? So how do you make sure that things are covered in response to the prominence of AI-driven social engineering and deep fakes and the prevalence of the dark web?
I can take
Uh,
take that.
Go ahead.
Or George, you
Yep,
got it?
go ahead. No, you
All right.
got it.
Yeah, just making sure that the training program you're a part of is is producing new content throughout the year. So that's really helpful. But I'm sure there's some tools that George and his team might have as well that could help you there. George, do you have anything you want to share that would help?
Sure. Like Lee said, having the fresh content is really going to help because what I've noticed as I'm doing my cybersecurity training, they are hitting the hot topics. They're bringing up AI, deepfakes, and I don't know about everybody else, but there was so much stuff going around during the elections that, you didn't know. I was getting text messages from, 55 different, people and emails to donate. And at the end of the day, you want to help, your party, but you also, that's the time you really got to think about when you are vigilant with your cybersecurity awareness. And with the product PII, I think the content really is important. And I know in the future, and it's not there now, but they're going to have some very similar, like they have the phishing simulations, they'll have an AI simulation and a deep fake situation, simulation. So that's all coming down the road, I'm pretty sure. But just
Mhm.
being really aware and just, don't trust anything that you have a gut feeling, trust your gut more than you would, and don't rush it. That's my big thing. Do not rush when you feel something is wrong.
Mhm. And then
And I
also
wanted to
on the
add,
PII platform, there's
oh,
actually AI training as well. So whole course on AI. as well as small educational videos here and there.
Very good.
Go ahead, Karen.
I wanted to add, it's also the holiday season. This is the perfect time that hackers like to come around. I remember, and I don't know, George, if you remember this, all staff members at Symmetric got a text message from George, and his number is saved in my phone, and it said, purchase a gift card for XYZ amount for the company. He's busy working in a meeting. Be vigilant about those as well. Your boss wouldn't ask you to purchase gift cards at random. If he does, go see him in person just to make sure.
Yep.
That's super valid. Another one that came through was about the cloud environment and the security of that. So as a lot of companies are transitioning to the cloud, how can they strengthen their cloud security measures? And are there particular considerations they should have when using a public versus a private cloud service?
I'll take that one. One of the big key factors is making sure that everything in the cloud is protected by multi-factor authentication. I can't even tell you how many MFA options I have on my phone just to get through my day. And that is the number one thing I think. And also having a vigilant security structure for you. You know, when you use a platform like Microsoft 365, just because you have Microsoft 365 doesn't mean that it's secure. Making sure you have the proper licensing, making sure that you have MFA turned on, and making sure that your MSP or whoever you're working with has your security score that you have on Microsoft 365. And there's also an abundance of other security tools, but that's for another conversation. But more or less, that would be what I would do.
Great. A final takeaway question here. If you guys could recommend, each of you, just one key cybersecurity practice or a mindset shift for companies to adopt right away, what would it be to ensure that they are resilient against future threats?
Multi-factor authentication. Everything. Even
For
if it's
me, I
annoying
would,
and there's fatigue, but it's probably one of the most important things.
I want to joke and say paranoia. Think
Yeah.
and then don't trust immediately. Zero trust.
There
Yeah.
you go.
for me, I'd recommend forming an open line of communication. Depends, Edward, on your position, but maybe making sure that everyone knows that they're in this together, and making it a habit or a recommendation that if you get a strange email, before answering it, you at least run it by one person on the team. So the more eyes, the better, especially if everyone's being educated. It's really two smart brains going to work against one bad guy.
Thank you guys so much. Again, if any more questions arise or if we missed yours, please let us know via email if you're still looking for further information on that. Our randomized winner of the $50 Amazon raffle is Victoria Koblenz. I apologize so much if I didn't pronounce that correctly, but congrats. We'll reach out to you via email after this with that information. You can double check it. It will not be a phishing email. It will be a real gift card. So again, I just want to thank everyone who took time out of their day to join us, as well as thank our wonderful speakers for just educating us on this extremely important topic. And we hope that everyone has a great rest of their day and week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
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 everyone.
everybody.
guys. All right, I'm going to shut it down now. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.